Hey everybody, I hope your day is going well. I am so excited that you decided to join me here. I want to talk about making time for your job search because this is something that I've seen over and over again, and I don't really hear many people talking about it. The truth is, if you're routinely so overworked at your current job, and if you add family and your personal life to it, if you never have any time at all to explore new career opportunities, chances are very, very low that your career is going to progress at a speed that it deserves. Like having that kind of space there that's routinized and habitualized and constant in your life, that is the best insurance policy you have that your career is going to move on an upward trajectory regardless of what your current circumstances are right now. So it's a big problem, it's a big deal, it's important, and it's something that absolutely needs to be taken seriously, because you can have the best coach in the world, you can have the best access and resources to the world, you can have the best network in the world, but if you don't have the proper amount of time to give it undivided attention to make the progress, it's never going to happen. So I want to offer some concrete tips and insights on this front that I hope is going to help you really make this happen. The first one, I know it can be a little bit of a cliche, you've probably heard it before. When you own the first hour of the day, you own the day. And that could not be more true. The biggest thing when we're talking about overwhelm, the biggest mistake people make is looking at the emotion and trying to fix the emotion first. If I just didn't feel as overworked and overwhelmed, then I would be able to make headway. But the truth is, the opposite is true. Take the actions first, and then your emotion, your state of mind, all of those things are going to change. And so let's take that perspective and make it absolutely clear. Look, the most practical way you can get more job offers on the table, the most practical way that you can schedule more interviews and get FaceTime with people who can actually create a role for you, okay, the best way to do that is to carve out an extra hour in your day before your day, quote unquote, starts, and just start by doing that. The first hour is about networking, job searching, pursuing new opportunities, and research and development all around that front. It's about, sowing the seeds and making it happen there. My advice, if you can make it happen, carve out 60 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you have at the start of every single day before anything else happens. Many of the people I work with, they'll just wake up an hour earlier. I understand that may not be feasible for everyone there. So find your hour. Maybe it's, halfway through the day. Maybe it's in the afternoon. But be absolutely ruthless about sticking to that dedicated time. That way you can spend really every other hour of your day not worried about that. It takes that load off because there is an hour there that I'm doing nothing else. I am shutting off my phone. I'm shutting off, all of my distractions, and I am just pursuing this. So owning that first hour of the day is ideal, because it really sets that template there and it allows you to feel like you've already won. But if you can't make it that strict first hour, do it later in the day, but just be absolutely ruthless. Like, you can't start merging and giving that up, because once you start doing that, it's like, a workout regimen. Once you give it up a couple of times, it's all over. Like, it's just going to be downhill. And so consistency is very important. Own the first hour, own the day. If you can devote that first hour to your job search, you have basically won the job search, because it's like compound interest. That activity, day in, day in, as a marathon, is going to, turbocharge your progress on that front. Okay, step number 2, okay, for those of you who are feeling truly overwhelmed and unable to really contemplate a real job search here, first, get an accurate baseline. Again, going back to this theme here, we have to get past the habitual emotional roadblocks we're in right now and really tie it down to things that we can see and track and understand. So that begins with your baseline. So if it has been a while for you, what I would recommend is to, for the next week, just try tracking every activity that you do. Okay, so just carry your journal. You can have a note app on your phone, but be absolutely methodical about tracking every single thing that you do. Trust me, it's harder than it sounds like, because you're going to get carried away. But it's important to really look at it and be able to break it down activity by activity, because maybe the things that you feel are taking up 90% of your time really aren't. Maybe it's taking up 50% of your time, but maybe that additional 40% is taken up by all these innocuous things that should be looked at and controlled. You're not going to know that without an accurate reading. So that's always an important step, is to get an accurate baseline there. The other thing, once you have a baseline, right, and you're looking at how to improve that baseline and ideally make time for this job search, it's really, really important to separate church and state, okay? So there's your career from the point of view of your current job, there's your job search, and there's everything else, right? There's your home life, there's your family life, all of that stuff. So let's say, broadly speaking, there's 3 buckets. What I would do is reorganize your entire calendar and have color-coded sections for each of those 3 buckets, if not more. And what I would do is set out dedicated time for every major thing that I do. So job search is 1, my work life and my responsibilities, that's 2, and number 3 is my family stuff. And yes, I mean right down to I'm spending the next 45 minutes playing with my children here. I'm spending 30 minutes taking a walk with my wife here. Like, the things that you don't see is where the greatest blind spots and areas of improvement lie. And so if you can, take the time to have a calendar entry to get back to Joe Schmo at your company about an action item, you can certainly make the time in your calendar to formalize a degree of time with your kids or with your wife or something important like that. Those should not be separate. They should be separate, but those should not be ignored or just assumed. Because when you add in something new, like a job search, what tends to happen is the things that you don't see on your calendar, the things that you don't hold yourself directly accountable for, those are the first things that are going to be sacrificed. And trust me, you don't want your job search to negatively impact your family life and your relationships there. And so make that important, contextualized, and visible in your calendar, and you're going to be so much ahead of the game. And, in that, as you break that down, you're going to be able to see, okay, that hour there that I spend on that job search, it's going to be easier for me to maintain because everything else is balanced there. It's when we merge all of this stuff, and this brings me to another point. Once you've separated all of this in your calendar, right, job search, work, and family, it's really, really important that you have the discipline not to merge those worlds when you're in something. In other words, when you're playing with your children, don't take an extra 45 seconds to fire off an email. When you're in your job search, don't take an extra 10 minutes to address this work thing that you have. Make these times separate, because a big contributor to overwhelm isn't actually the amount of work that we're doing or the amount of stuff that's on our plate. It's the fact that there's no differentiation there. So in our minds, it's just a constant swirl of activity and priorities where you are, you're putting out fires without ever thinking about, building a structure that is fireproof, right? So don't keep these things separate and don't let that merge, because that's a huge contributor to feeling like you just don't have enough time and you feel overwhelmed when it comes to the job search. So 100% focus. If you've got 20 minutes to spend crafting an important email or a quick value presentation before an interview, spend those 20 minutes on that and then move on. That'll really, really help. Here's another tip. This relates to phone and email, but for most of us, this is 90%, email nowadays. Check for overreach. And here's what I mean, okay? Overreach can happen on the part of others, and it can happen on the part of ourselves in terms of the presuppositions we're coming into our work with. So let's start with others, all right? Let's just question the behavior here, because let me give you an example. Sometimes, you'll get an email that's like comes in at 4:55 p.m., right? You're heading out the door and it's a to-do list of things that you need to do. Well, if you're a really conscientious person, you might automatically think that you can't leave without giving this person an answer, right? Because they can't leave, unless they get it. But is that the case? Or is it the fact that they're sending this to you because they don't want an answer from you right now? They want you to take a day with it and come back to them, right? When it's not clear like that, it's important not to assume urgency, okay? And here's another thing. practice not responding to messages outside of hours, okay? The minute you do that, it's a slippery slope. It's exactly like we're talking about in terms of the time thing. You do that once, and now people are going to start habitually overreaching. So getting into the habit of that, of just not answering, not having access, even just like, physically not having access, turning off the phone, crazy as it sounds, right? Doing these things can make a really, really big difference there. Limiting your replies to business hours, very, very important. And going back to this expectations of others, if you don't know if your boss needs something from you tomorrow or the day after versus a little bit later, send a message before you agree, right? Just send a message saying, hey, just want to be clear, I'm currently working on this. Is it okay if I have this out to you a week from now, right? Ask. And a lot of times, in fact, I would say the majority of times, you're going to find people are flexible, but you need to ask. Ask before you accept. Don't just automatically accept and then rush to put that as the first thing on your plate that then shunts everything, including your job search, off. That's not going to work, right? So just asking people before you say yes in terms of how does this sound for getting this back to you can make a really big difference. That way you can also parse out what's really urgent and what's just something that, you just need to schedule out after your more important tasks have been completed. Here's another one, okay? So we're talking about the assumptions of others. Now let's talk a little bit about the assumptions that we bring into it, okay? If the way that you approach your work is based on a philosophy that is designed to not be sustainable, that is a huge contributor to how you're feeling right now and your inability to make time for a job search. In other words, if your assumption is, I gotta hit it 150%, I gotta be the last one out of the office, the first one in, well, of course, of course you're having trouble. Your philosophy is geared towards extremism, right? And so let's be honest, you and I, for a moment here. If you're executing this job search, if you're serious about that, making it happen, that should be the priority. Career-wise, that should be your priority. The priority should be what's next, the next opportunity, how you're going to parlay this, how you're going to position yourself, how you're going to get these offers, how you're going to negotiate these offers. That should be consuming your mind because that is the future, and the future should be more important to you than what has come before. And guess what? Your current job is in the past. You may still be working there, collecting money from there, having relationships there, but the minute you seriously ramp up a job search and make the decision to say this is not enough, this place is in your rearview mirror. So it makes absolutely no sense for you to keep going 100% here and going 10 miles an hour on your job search, right? So here's what we need to do. We need to start thinking about this current job as a paycheck. That's all it is right now. It is a paycheck. And with an eye towards that, we need to see what is the minimum effective dosage of work that I can put in here that will give me the most passable results to enable me to ramp this up, get these offers enough. I don't want this to tank while this is going up, right? But at the same time, I don't care whether this goes up and down. This has to go up. This has to go up, right? So I know my hand analogies are getting all over the place, but you understand what I'm saying. So with an eye towards that, challenging these assumptions about how you're doing this work can make a really big difference. Here's an alternate idea. Instead of going 150 miles an hour at your work and being the first one in, last one out, think about this. What's the 20% of what I'm doing that's responsible for 80% of my results? You've been tracking your activities. This should help. Take a look and focus your attention on doing that 20%. And for the other 80% of what you do, either delegate, schedule out, avoid for the time being, do whatever you need to do. Keep it afloat, but that's it. And take all of that extraneous energy and funnel it into your job search and funnel it into the future. That's the best insurance you're going to have that this is going to work. And it must work, because you wouldn't be at this state if your current job was it. And so your loyalty now needs to ultimately be to yourself and the future, and treat the paycheck like a paycheck. And I don't care how high of a role you have. This is a mentality thing, okay? And realize that that's not a knock on who you are or your standing as a professional. Being able to prioritize is what this is all about. Anyone who runs a business will tell you that there are times you need to make hard decisions. And when you have limited resources like time and attention, you need to make the hard decisions in terms of this deserves the bulk of my attention, this does not. And this, I'm just going to keep spinning long enough for this to gain traction, and then it doesn't matter. Once you have offers on the table, everything is different and everything changes. So, challenge those preconceptions about your work. Start putting new preconceptions or ideas into place, such as what's the 20% that's responsible for 80%, or something like, my team here of people that I work with, it's filled with high achievers, right? And they're handling many of these things. So at least temporarily here, I don't also need to be as much of a high achiever. I can essentially coast to a degree and temporarily funnel that energy towards my future, right? And so if you write it down, you contextualize it like that, that can help you adjust and come up with a temporary philosophy for your current job that's not going to go right up against your job search, right? Very important to jive this stuff, on a deep level, because what we're doing here, it's not just about job opportunities, right? It's not just about offers or your current job. This is you, your self-identity, your sense of self-worth, and what you deserve. What you deserve in terms of how high you can rise. So treat it seriously, merge these practical tips with what you're doing, and I promise you, you will find the time to make this happen, And just remember what I said earlier on in this video. The big misconception people have when they're in a dark emotional place or a frustrated emotional place, the big problem they have is they say, I need to change my emotions. And if you change the actions instead, the emotions will follow. So adjust those actions and you're going to be a real step ahead of the game here. Thank you guys so much. I hope that has been helpful. I'll talk to you soon.